Hey, what's happening, YouTube? It's Mark here. This is my part 3 where I talk about marriage in Japan, and I am gonna be talking about the end of most marriages between foreign men and Japanese women, the end being divorce. I think in Western culture, the divorce rate is about 50%, but in Japan, the divorce rate between foreign men and Japanese women, it stands at about 80% last time I checked. The numbers may have changed. Now, knowing my personality and the cultures I'm coming from a British and a Jamaican culture, but emphasis on knowing me, knowing my personality, knowing who I am. I can't even see myself being in that 20% of successful marriages with such a high divorce rate. There's something I read somewhere once. It says that we can learn from our mistakes, but we can also learn from other people's mistakes. And I've seen firsthand some major horror stories. I've heard firsthand from the horse's mouths actually, loads of guys I've spoken to who have gone to hell and back and then hell again with their Japanese wives. And seeing that, it's like, why would I now think, oh, I'm going to be the exception to the rule, right? The odds are stacked against me. And why go down that road? I know people could say, oh, Mark, but don't be pessimistic, be optimistic. It doesn't mean that you have to be in the 80% of failing marriages. But like I keep saying, I know myself. Okay, so that's why I'm not married to a Japanese woman. Never dated one, not likely to. In Japan, when divorce comes around, which is the inevitable in most situations, it doesn't seem that the court systems screw men over so much when it comes to alimony and child support. My ex, who has a child with a Japanese guy, they weren't married. But when it came to child support, I think he was only paying something like $250 a month, which is just amazing considering the guy was possibly making maybe about 500,000 yen, which is about $5,000 a month take home. So it was surprising to me that he was only paying such a small amount. She didn't care because she made enough money to look after her and her child very comfortably. They had vacations back home every year. She's American, and separate to that, we would go to places around Asia and all that stuff. So, and she insisted on paying for her and her daughter. So she did okay. But so the $250, which the court required him to pay, wasn't that much. So men don't get screwed over so much when it comes to the money part of things. How men get screwed over here through the court system is with access to their children. Now, you could be super dad. You could have a cape on your back with SD on the back. Super dad. I'm super dad. Right? It doesn't matter. You could have been, or you could be the best father in the world. Financially supportive, emotionally supportive, just a good role model, everything. You're checking all the boxes of how good of a father you are. But once that divorce talk comes around, you are going to turn into the devil very fast. Maybe that's universal in all divorces, but I'll tell you just some things that I've seen happen in Japan that makes me know that, I'm not likely to go down that road, because if a woman tried to stop me from seeing my child, let me not say on camera, let me not say, recording a lot of people stupidly on social media incriminate themselves on camera. So let me not say how it would go down if she was being a complete bitch during that whole divorce process. And preventing me from seeing my kids. Here's a funny thing. A lot of guys in Japan get divorced and don't even know they're divorced. Now, I know some of you are thinking, what do you mean they get divorced and they don't know that they're divorced? Well, I think the law changed in the last few years, but what used to happen before, during my time in Japan, there's this thing called a hanko. It's a stamp, it's your name stamp, it's engraved with your name in Chinese characters, and they stick it in red ink, and it stamps official documents here, bank documents, stuff at the city office or whatever. And you have a hanko. And I think it's a dumb thing basically, because what if you lose your hanko, or what if someone steals your hanko? Now, what was happening with a lot of guys, Japanese and foreign alike, their wife tells them, I want to get divorced or whatever. Or maybe she doesn't. What women would do in Japan is just go down to the city office, because even though you might have a white dress wedding or whatever wedding, that Japanese traditional wedding, whatever you do, when it's all said and done, you get married at the city office, the town hall. What these women would do. Now, if you remember, I talked about this in part 1, where women control the finances. So a lot of times the men's hankos are with their wives. If not, the women know where their husbands keep the hankos. So sometimes a dude will come home from work to discover that he's divorced. His wife has left the house, or just changed the lock on the door and he can't enter his house anymore or apartment, because they're now officially divorced. She went down to the city office, hankoed his name on the divorce papers, and that was that. And he didn't have a leg to stand on, because all the city office are going to say is like, well, we have your hanko here. So what a lot of dudes started doing is hiding their hankos. I knew a dude, foreign guy, American guy, on his second Japanese wife. When he told me this was his second wife, and when he was telling me about all the hell he was going through, I said to him, dude, but so like you went through one situation with a Japanese woman, and then you decided to go through a second time? I mean, why? He's like, yeah, I know. So anyway, this dude, he at one point said to his wife, you know what? I'm tired of you controlling all my finances. I want to take over control of my finances. Our finances. I'm the husband. I'm the business owner. I want to control stuff. That did not sit well with his wife, and that was the start of the end. And she started being very difficult with him. By this time, he had 3 kids with his second wife. He had 2 kids with the first wife. He had 3 kids with the second wife. By this time, he had been relegated to a separate bedroom. Of course, I talked about that before in part 2. The dude used to sleep with his hanko. I guess he didn't have her to cuddle with anymore, so he cuddled his hanko. He would shower with his hanko. He would take his hanko to his business. He kept his hanko with him all the time to delay the possibility of her just going down and getting them divorced at the city office, because he knew it was coming, but he knew that if they got divorced, he would never see his kids again. Eventually, it got to the point where, okay, now I want a divorce officially. She's getting a lawyer. He's now having to get a lawyer. He's paying for her legal expenses. He's paying for his legal expenses. And this happens all the time because, like I said, the women, most of them don't want to work. So they're using your money to screw you over, right, with their lawyer. So she went when they went to court, right, what did she do? She goes into court. Judge is there, right? It's always in the woman's favor. At least 99% of the time, it's in the women's favor in Japan in the court system when it comes to divorce and access to kids and alimony, child support. It's always in the woman's favor, but especially with the access part. And the women here are extremely vindictive. Like they're very spiteful when it comes where that's concerned. Like, yeah, this happens in the West too. So when dude goes to court with his wife, soon to be ex-wife, she goes in, of course. He beat me and the kids. They interview the kids. The kids were, prep school age, elementary school age. Kids are like, what? No, daddy didn't beat me. Whatever, right? But she goes in, convincing they're going to start believing the wife over the husband, especially because she's Japanese. So the divorce goes through. Homeboy, he can't see his kids anymore because she's been a real bitch with the whole thing. He lived in the same city with his kids, around the corner practically, couldn't see his kids, right? And what I remember maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, there was a case in Tokyo where this foreign guy, if I'm not mistaken, he's American. He was going through a divorce with his wife, and his Japanese wife. She was making it extremely difficult for him to see his kid, and just being a real biatch, spiteful. That once that spiteful button is pressed, man, all bets are off. This dude, with all the stress that he was going through with his wife and not allowing him to see their kid. I think he was American, he's a white guy. I remember the picture. If I find it, I'll post it up on the screen while editing this video. In the lobby of the court, he stabbed her in the neck and killed her. He was that outraged. And I can see how these guys get to this point, right? Because these women just make it extremely difficult. Like I think I just said, Western women do it too, but it goes up a few notches here in Japan when it comes to being spiteful and not giving men access. And I think this is a big reason why a lot of men here are alcoholics. Like hardcore alcoholics. I know a lot of foreign guys here who have been through it with their Japanese wives who can't see their kids. I know Japanese guys here who can't see their kids. I know one Japanese guy here with a foreign wife who can't see his kids or very limited access. And she's just she has adopted a real Japanese spiteful way. And as far as I know, he was a loving father. But I think that's why so many dudes here are alcoholics, man. The dudes here, that's their only release. I think if I had to go through the stress that these guys go through too, I'd be an alcoholic or something, because everyone needs a release. It might be drugs, it might be alcohol, it might be whatever. I relieve my stress with exercise, and I'm not married. People say to me, why aren't you married? I said, no wife, no strife. No, right? And I use that as a way to deflect from people asking me personal questions here. People love to be all up in your business, right? So these dudes, they're alcoholics. They try to get their lawyers to fight on their behalf. They have advocacy groups for guys going through this stuff. They have advocacy groups for guys who had a Japanese wife in their respective home countries, and the wife just basically kidnapped the kids and took them back to Japan. And the Japanese system just completely protects the woman from and prevents the man from seeing the kid. All kinds of messed up stuff, right? Now, I'm not saying these men are all perfect, little angels with halos on their heads. Some of these men brought a lot of this on themselves. A lot of these men were dirty dogs and cheated like multiple times on their wives. I know one guy who used to, an American guy, that a friend of mine, he with his wife that he had 2 kids, and he cheated. He had the cheated in her face like this, just pushing up on her face. He wasn't even discreet with his stuff. He just had it in her face, and of course, multiple times as well. And of course, what's a woman gonna do in that situation? She's gonna push back, and her way was to divorce him and prevent him from seeing his kids. And when he did see his kids, it was extremely limited. And when he would come and when he would talk about it and complain, I'm like, dude, but in all fairness, you kind of brought this on yourself, because you treated that woman like dirt. I mean, the way you were cheating and stuff. So, I mean, I can't blame her. If I were in her shoes, I'd do the exact same thing. I'd be a complete biatch to you as well, right? So this doesn't apply to this guy, but I know how a lot of these guys come to Japan and cheat. A lot of guys, not all, but a lot of guys are the type of guys who come to Japan. I don't think I fit into this category because I did okay for myself when I was back home. But a lot of guys who come to Japan, they aren't the type of guys who had women tripping over themselves back home. A guy I know, he was an illustrator for a comic book called Charisma Man. And Charisma Man is the geek from back home who was, flipping burgers in a fast food restaurant while being a student or whatever, graduates university, comes to Japan, and then all of a sudden he turns into, hi, I'm Charisma Man, where Japanese women fall at my feet, right? And a lot of these guys are like that. So they came here and suddenly they're getting all this attention from women. And even after they might find a good one, maybe, and get married, they cheat like crazy because they're getting so much attention that they never got before. I remember my first year in Japan, this dude, when I first started in this company, he was like covering someone's annual leave or something. So he was telling me, this British guy, a little short, chubby looking British guy with this really geeky haircut with this kind of comb over looking thing. He wasn't bald, but yeah, just geek. But he was telling me about all these women he had on the go. Like, I've got one here in this town, got one here in this city. I'm seeing this other one tonight. Tomorrow night, I'm seeing this one. And then and it's and I got this woman and that woman. And I'm sitting there looking at this guy. I'm thinking, yeah, I know you wouldn't have this big talk if we were back in the UK, right? So they turn into charisma men and they take full advantage. I've never had problems, like I just said. When I was back home, I did very well. I scored some, some top-notch women, as far as looks go and all that type of stuff, right? And in Japan, I could literally clean up, but I'm just not at that stage in my life anymore where I need to necessarily prove something, If I go out by myself or with the guys, women come and talk to me. I'm not bragging, but this is just a fact. I'm literally not bragging now. It's not so, I'm not the type of guy who, I can do so well with women. No, I'm not bragging, but it's just a fact. Some people say I'm handsome. I'm pretty good with talking, so I do okay with the ladies and I could if I wanted to, but I'm in a committed relationship with one woman. I don't need to stray, but these guys cheat and their wives divorce them. So that's what happens. But, when it's all said and done, looking at the divorce rate, I'm not going to go down that road. I liken marriage in Japan to an abattoir, a slaughterhouse. When they put those, I don't know if you know how they do factory farms, but they pack all these cows into very small spaces and feed them food that they shouldn't be eating naturally. Anyway, in factory farming with cattle, when it comes time to slaughter them, they put them on a big conveyor belt. And at the head of the conveyor belt, there is a man standing at the front with a bolt gun, and he just shoots the cow in the head. The cow is dead. They wrap a chain around the cow's hind leg or legs. The conveyor belt thingy pulls them up upside down. They cut their throats and slit their stomach so their guts are hanging out, so the blood can all drain out. Now, that's inevitable. Once you get on that conveyor belt, the only outcome is death. And I liken marriage over here to that. And, I'm trying my best not to get on that conveyor belt, because here's the thing, when you're in that conveyor belt, from the videos I've seen, the cows, if they look up to the left or to the right, depending on whatever, when they look up, what are they seeing? They're seeing cows upside down, hanging from their hind legs with their throats cut and their guts hanging out. So like I said earlier, I can learn from my mistakes, but I can also learn from other people's mistakes. That's why I've made a conscious effort not to go down that road. Not saying that all Japanese women are bad, but again, going back to me, I know my personality. Yeah, I know my personality, and my cultures and their culture just can't. The cultures and personalities, nah. I remember when I was single, I went on I was forced by this friend of mine to go on a date with this Japanese chick. I didn't even want to go on a date. Just like, I was about to cancel. My mate was just like, go on, man, just go. Because he's into Japanese women. And he really wanted me to date a Japanese woman, even though he knew I had no interest. And I went on this date, and she was in her 30s like me at the time. And she lived with her parents, and she was just looking for a man to work and look after her. And I was like, oh, hell no. And I made it very clear, because I didn't even want to be on the date anyway, but I made it very clear on the date to her that if I ever got married to a Japanese woman, she would have to work. I never heard from her again. She never heard from me again. But, right, that's just me. But anyway, let me run. If you have a comment to make, please make it below. If you liked the video, please click like. If you disliked the video, click dislike. I mean, it's your choice, right? Please comment, like or dislike, but hopefully you like. Please share this video, and if you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to my channel. Okay, click all so that you receive all notifications when I put out a new video. All right, so this has been Mark from Mark's Mind. All the best, guys. Take care. Peace.